Hi, and welcome to Shhh the Talk Show. Did you know that when you watch the ads that pre-roll in completion before the episode, it helps us generate funding for our show? If you like what we do and you'd like to support us, please subscribe and share the channel with everyone you know. You can also continue learning about the subjects that we discuss by reading our column in the Sunday morning newspaper.
Young women are taught that their bodies are like a toothbrush. You don't want to be a used toothbrush, right? So don't have sex before marriage.
Oh, you're a man if you've had more experience. But then when it comes to the women that they choose to marry or choose to take on in their lives, she must be pure, chaste, untouched.
We have handled 4 cases where the young women have chosen to be raped over telling their parents.
Masturbating starts automatically. Kids don't even realize it.
We are raising entitled young men. And we are raising women to know their place.
Everyone's skin color is different, everyone's penis size is different, everyone's vagina is different, everyone's hymen is different.
Today we're talking about possibly what is the biggest taboo in Sri Lanka right now, which is sex. Chia. That's kind of like, that's the usual reaction we get, no, Ike. But, we thought if we're going to be talking about something sinful, we might as well talk about it at a place that offers us a lot of sinfulness. So we are at Hive Desert Bar, which is in Colombo 5. And you get desserts and coffees, and they are extraordinary desserts and coffees, which we are going to tuck into during this conversation. Obviously, we have to have 2 people who have no qualms about discussing this subject and who will help us to navigate this really tricky area of sex in Sri Lanka. And we have Hans and Paba, and those of you who know them know what they do and know them well for it. They're both very outspoken. They're both involved in a lot of activism and education work in Sri Lanka. What is the issue? Why do you think Sri Lanka is so shy around this subject? And not even shy, it's almost like a witch hunt if this subject is brought up into like in an official setting.
I don't know if we can limit the conversation to Sri Lanka. I think anywhere where you have a conservative mindset, you're going to have it.
It's patriarchy and religion.
Yeah, so it's shame. It's the shame that is associated with the body. Because if you take a look at even sex ed in America, young women are taught that their bodies are like a toothbrush. You don't want to be a used toothbrush, right? So don't have sex before marriage. Simple. So this toothbrush metaphor is used in sex ed in America to make sure that everybody stays a virgin.
In America? That's not working though.
It's not working because it's not going to work here either. Yeah, sex ed, we don't really use sex ed because then people think we're only talking about sex, and I think that's also a problem. Because it's not about sex. It's about your body, it's about your anatomy, it's about reproduction, it's about how you treat another human being. So that's why we prefer the term relationship education, because it's not just about penises and vaginas. It's not just about that. In America, in Sri Lanka, in Colombo, there is a lot of other forms of sex other than penetrative vaginal sex that takes place, and then everybody thinks, oh, I'm a virgin. I have these conversations and I go and I say, then ඉතින් ගුද සංසර්ගය කරොත්, කලව සංසර්ගය කරොත්, මුඛ සංසර්ගය කරොත්, එහෙනම් කන්‍යාභාවය තාම තියනවාද? කන්‍යාභාවය රැකගෙනද? And you must see the number of people who say yes. Yes, you are still a virgin because your hymen is still intact, right? So this whole idea of virginity, I mean, you go down the road here, you can go to that hospital close by here and get a hymenoplasty. That is where we are. And why do you get a hymenoplasty? To give the man the pleasure of something to pop on the wedding night. I mean, it's ridiculous.
And I'm really glad that we have a guy on the show saying all this, right? Because obviously you're like one of few men who are comfortable talking about this in the way it should be spoken about, because I think a lot of the time, like you said, because of the patriarchy, a lot of women also feel that shame because for some reason, and I'm sorry, right, to do this, but I feel like especially in the South Asian subcontinent also, there's this sense of entitlement with men, right? They go around and they sleep with women, or they'll do the Bangkok trips, and you know what it is, right? So it's like this, oh, you're a man if you've had more experience. But then when it comes to the women that they choose to marry or choose to take on in their lives, she must be pure, chaste, untouched.
So again, it's the slut-stud dichotomy, right?
Even menstruation has become unclean because of the religions, because of Hinduism, because of Christianity, because that the religions have identified the women as dirty beings, and then patriarchy supports that narrative.
When we talk about virginity, we talk about the different kinds of hymens, right? How women are born with all different kinds of hymens.
I think that's something that nobody actually knows even.
Exactly, because they think it's a one-size-fits-all hymen. And there's something called the hymen imperforatus, which completely covers the vaginal opening. So this full wicket cover hymen is a problem when a young woman starts to menstruate, because menstrual blood doesn't go. Yeah. So this imperforate hymen has to be surgically removed. Right? Then you have hymens that are around the vagina. So, for example, in 2004, they did a study of something like 39 women in England. They found that over 34 women or 35 women still had their hymen intact after giving birth. Women are born without hymens. Hymens break for whatever reason. So this whole red blood on a white sheet concept is an absolute constructed fiction. Now let me tell you about a teacher who I do these trainings with health science teachers, and school, all of us know, health science teachers came. I said, tell me about menstruation. Describe to me, osap chakra gana kiyala denna. This is what she said. She went to the board and she drew it. She drew the Dimbakosha, the fallopian nala, garbhashaya, yoni marga, and this is what she said. 13 years she has been teaching, trained by the National Institute of Education allegedly. ඩිම්බකෝෂයෙන් ඩිම්බයක් පිටත් විද්දී තුවාලයක් ඇති වෙනවා. ඒ තුවාලයෙන් ලේ ගලාගෙන ඇවිල්ලා ෆලෝපියන් නාලේ හරහා ඇවිල්ලා ගර්භාෂය තුලින් ගිහිල්ලා යෝනි මාර්ගයෙන් පිටත් වෙනවා.
When these things are said, I can't keep a straight face. So
Right?
Don't
Right? Now
laugh.
this is how she
legitimate
described
concern.
menstruation. Right? So I said, Madam, she has not read her book. She has not taught the book obviously in class. Right? And she is so. Where are we? You were not taught by a man. This woman can't talk about it. You go to any school, and every time I go and I ask about, is menstrual blood clean and unclean? Take blood from your finger, take menstrual blood, put it under a microscope and tell me which one is killy and which one is not. Right? And everybody gets very uncomfortable. And then I say, you can't go to the Udamalu of the Sri Mahabodhiya yanna bෑ. You can't go to the Pattiripuwa. Very good. Kawuda ewa genawe Lankawata? කවුද ශ්‍රී මාබෝධිය වහන්සේ ගෙනාවේ ලංකාවට? A woman. කවුද ශ්‍රී දන්තධාතු වහන්සේ ගෙනාවේ ලංකාවට? A woman. So what is this concept of kiwi?
What is exactly happening with teenagers in this country right now in your work? What have you seen?
I mean, biologically, teenage years are called adolescence because you go through a lot of changes physically, emotionally, and there's no information, there's no understanding of what is happening to their bodies. So, like all of us, you turn to your friends or now to internet to look and see and understand what's happening to your bodies, and then they see porn and big penises and also these stereotypical ideas about being a macho masculine man who should have a big penis and all those things, without realizing that everyone's different, everybody grows in their own pace, there is no comparison, everyone's skin color is different, everyone's penis size is different, everyone's vagina is different, everyone's hymen is different. So there's no conversation about it. Young boys, young girls find information from their peers to from the internet. And a lot of young people today, teenagers especially, think that sex is porn. And they don't understand that the pornography is a completely different industry where 2 people or 3 people or how many people are having sex in front of so many cameras, and it's an act, it's edited, it's lit properly. And so then they develop these unrealistic expectations from women again. and then expect their girlfriends to behave like that. A kid can't go to their parents and ask, okay, අම්මේ තාත්තේ මම මේක දැක්කා මොකද්ද? You can't even ask from parents because then the internet you'll face a complete shutdown of the internet. Or you blame the internet or you blame the phone or the computer and deprive of that. So internet is itself is a good thing in terms of sharing of information, for education, for entertainment and all that. So then parents also have to understand that the internet is a reality. So we have to have a conversation either at home or at school about this information so the kids don't go around trying to wrap their penises around PVC pipes.
Why are they doing that?
To make it longer,
make it longer, make it large, make it stronger.
Because there are ads on porn sites that this is how you make your penis bigger. Now you may delete your history, but your browser remembers. And your browser then starts making suggestions because there are cookies now when you visit these sites, and then the cookies come. So now you're 8 years old and your kid comes onto your computer, you have deleted your history, you have done a wonderful job, but your kid puts on, let's say, Google Chrome, and then suggestions start appearing. Someone in Thailand wants to talk to you, someone in Russia wants to talk to you, right? And these very provocative looking girls, suddenly these things come. So if you're 8 years old or 7 years old, you're going to click. And you will then be lost in that web. Literally, you're lost there, you're searching. So parents must, if they're looking at adult content, be aware of what technology is in terms of what you're now exposing your kid to, number one. Number two, make sure you have a conversation with your child. Make sure that those lines of communication are open. And I know in a conservative society talking about sex is not easy, but you must have that conversation. Relationship ed or our approach to it is that we talk about things like respect. What does it mean to respect? Because when we go and we talk about respect, if I go to a classroom and I say define respect, Gauravaya Yanu, and I tell them, Nirvachanaya Karana, tell me what it means, they can't. They cannot give me a definition. Even adults struggle to give me a definition for respect. But then if you ask, whom should you respect? Then pata the answers come, parents, teachers, God, country, Pujaka Paksha, the full works. Right?
School uniform, the tie pin.
You know, and then you see that respect is always going outward and upward. It's a power dynamic, right? So you respect someone with more power than you. And you see that in sports teams, the whole Ayya, Malli, Akka, Nangi culture, right? So respect needs to be redefined. Respect is something that we need. I often use the word value interchangeably with respect. To respect someone is to value that person, value that person's journey. The other word that we focus a lot on is consent. Helping understand what consent means, right? Because consent is not understood here. In a Ilankana Sanskritiya, there is no understanding of consent. Then we talk about what trust means and how trust has to be earned, right? Kids in a relationship within a week are exchanging nudes because that is what you are supposed to do in a relationship, because you are supposed to love and trust. Boys use lines like, why don't you love me, don't you trust me, right? So you need to help young people understand these, if you like, basic concepts. Empathy, what does empathy mean? What does it mean? What does self-esteem mean? Are we focusing on our children's self-esteem?
That's also called social emotional learning, which is the process of which adults, young children and adults learn or understand, learn and understand about their own emotions, and also kind of set and achieve their positive goals, also show and feel empathy, and also establish, maintain positive relationships, and also take responsible decisions. At workshops, when we do sexual harassment workshops and all that, we get adults to list out feelings that they feel when somebody is treating you badly. So most of them find it so difficult to come up with 5 words because you don't have that social emotional learning, you lack emotional intelligence to identify what you are feeling. So when you can't understand what you are feeling, you can't understand what the other person is feeling. That leads to abusive relationships, bad or rather negative decisions, so not achieving life goals. So it becomes a cycle of violence with lack of self-esteem and all that, because you are unable to understand what you are feeling. So that's why social emotional learning is very important for children and also for adults.
Coming back to your point, this is why you need to talk about this kind of emotional learning together with sex and reproduction.
With any kind of education.
Yeah, because talking about sex and reproduction in isolation is just, it's not sensible.
Now recently I think I read that some conference around this whole debate of sex education for schools and all that, there have been some pushback saying that we are trying to teach children who are too young for this, we are trying to teach them these subjects, and that we should wait until they are older and able to sort of make, I don't know, more wise decisions around it.
The health science curricula is pretty good. It is so good that in 2016 when Kuliyapitiya happened and that young boy was not allowed into school, right? Because his parents had allegedly had HIV. The whole village came and they said, we are not sending our children to school. That school was empty. And what saddened me was that how HIV is contracted, how HIV is spread was in the textbook at the time. So none of those parents had read their textbook, and frankly even the Minister of Education at the time hadn't read the textbook because he made comments saying the child has to be separated from the mother, which really made us angry. So what does it come down to? However good this textbook is, however good the people who have written the textbook are, however much information is in this textbook, if the teachers don't have the skills to teach, now that is our job with health science teachers, we go and lajja baya nathi karanna balanne api. Right? Me pothe tiyana tika karamu.
Not only the skills, because when teachers also carry their baggage, no? So if you have a Buddhist teacher, so she'll bring her Buddhist morality or value system to the classroom, and then you always screen everything, all the information that give out to children through your moral system. If Christian teach or anybody, it goes for anyone.
No, but yeah, so that coming back to this, that's why I always tell parents, are you not concerned about this syllabus being finished? Because if the math syllabus or the IT syllabus or the Sinhala syllabus or the science syllabus is not finished, you'll ask me, I may pardon ivara natte.
The whole hahu about Hateputta was unnecessary because everything that Hateputta had
is already in the textbook.
So then it again questions the whole Hateputta initiative, because you have a set of teachers, you have a set of schools where they don't teach kids the existing syllabus. And you bring in a Hateputta expecting the schools to distribute it to children. So when you have a system where sex education is not welcome, masturbation is not welcome, menstruation is not welcome, you can't expect the system to distribute something like Hateputta.
We have handled 4 cases where the young women have chosen to be raped over telling their parents. Now that is a ridiculous situation. All they did was send a nude. Right? And at that time they consented to send that nude. They go, which is fine, we are not judging that action. But now when they are being blackmailed, now when they are trying to be exploited, they prefer the sexual violence to having a conversation with their parents and saying, I'm in trouble, help me. And what are we talking about? We are talking about a picture of your naked body. So my question is, we are the country of Sigiri and we keep saying, ape sanskruti, mokanda me sanskruti. Right? Our country. So I'm not saying everybody needs to walk around topless. I'm just saying, why are we continuing to shame people about their bodies?
What is the right age to start talking about sex?
That is currently in the grade 7 syllabus, and again I'll say what we said earlier, this has been put together by education experts and psychologists. So grade 7, it starts that conversation around masturbation, how masturbation is natural, how
and
masturbation is normal,
natural.
wet dreams are natural.
That's when it occurs for some people. No?
So they are taking a look at the physical development and then making this, and it's perfectly sensible. Children are not going to experiment because they read it in the textbook. Children are going to experiment because they see it on the internet.
And also it happens to their bodies, almost, it's natural biological process. I mean, masturbating starts automatically. Kids don't even realize it. I mean, have you ever realized, okay, now I'm going to masturbate, I saw it this way, okay, let's try. That's not the way you do it. Because you're...
It's self-discovery.
It's self-discovery. You touch your body and then you feel okay, and then you try it again, and then, you know, there's a development even in masturbation. Interestingly, how NIE presents this information, they talk about wet dreams in the textbook. But they talk about masturbation in the teacher guide. Right? So the information about wet dreams are freely available for all kids who are in grade 7, but information about masturbation is only, I mean, it depends on teacher.
Laid out in the teacher guide
Yeah.
for the teacher to discuss in the classroom. We really like this progress that has been made, especially in the last few years, and that is why we are so frustrated with the lack of skills given to the teachers who have to teach it. That we really need to focus on that, not so much the information but the skills to teach it competently. And the other thing is, yes, okay, condom is still not in the textbook. The reason they don't have condom in the textbook is because the argument is that if you put the word condom in the textbook, then children are they're going to experiment.
If you read a newspaper, you know about condoms.
Or you listen to the radio. Or so for us, all the more reason to have condom in the textbook.
Isn't it also good if children are using condoms, if they're going to be experimenting with sexual...
You have a classic ABC methodology. Since HIV came, the whole world follows a classic ABC methodology. Abstinence, don't have sex before marriage. B, be faithful to your partner. And C, condom. Now, I'm paraphrasing, but in the Sri Lankan English textbook, it is don't have sex before marriage, which is fine. Be faithful to your spouse, which is good. And C is interpreted thus: assess your risks and take precautions.
So take a knife, take a gun, or whatever.
It's a bit oblique. It's a bit oblique, right? So now again, even though that is in the textbook, the teacher can use that assess your risks and take precautions to have a conversation about contraceptives if he or she chooses. So there is a bit of wiggle room there also. So we shouldn't dismiss it, but the opportunities have been created in this textbook. The problem is now it is health and physical education. So when you get to this lesson, in your time they used to skip it. Now they say volleyball parak gihla gahala emu. Sometimes these are PE teachers who have been now given this health science book and said, well, they know to do drills. They don't
sometimes they're not even PE teachers, sometimes they are maths teachers, Sinhala teachers or English teachers who don't have other subjects or who have a smaller timetable because these subjects are not important. It's just you have to pass this subject at grade 9. If you choose to do health and physical education for O levels, then you are given us 5 questions, okay, study this. Everyone can say, okay, drunk driving is bad, but have you stopped it? Everybody, the kids would say smoking is bad on the paper, and then they'll just go after the exam and have a cigarette. So that's the reality. So the education we have has not kind of let the people to think critically and also change their behaviors and attitudes.
Have you seen a change in society, in kids, because sex education is talked about a little more, maybe not to its optimum levels, but because it is a conversation now than it was back then?
For me, what's frustrating is that because we have this approach in education, there has been no real change. So for example, I was reading a newsletter written in the 1980s, 1980 or 1981 in Kurunegala about the problems that women face in terms of harassment. And I was reading it last year, and there was nothing written in 1981 about those problems that in 2019 that don't exist. Where is this sense of entitlement, this not understanding what consent is, where you lean against or rub yourself up against this girl? Where does that come from? It comes from how we are brought up, right? We are raising entitled young men, and we are raising women to know their place.
And to tolerate.
Correct.
Boys will be boys.
There is segregation, even though the kids today study or they learn the same curriculum. In terms of your moral system, you are segregated. I mean, look at how the segregated schools started, even in Sri Lanka. So the boys to learn about mathematics and go to London and study further. The girls' schools were started to teach them sewing and knitting and things like that. That's how all the famous big segregated schools, Catholic schools, all of it started in the world. So we still have the system. Even if you are in a mixed school, that segregation is there, because if a girl starts her periods at school, so she will be covered fully and she'll be taken into the home science, and boys will be sent to the playground to play, and then the parents will come, a three-wheeler somehow manage to come to the home science door, and then she'll be pushed into the tuk-tuk and she'll be taken home. So that's like the standard practice, right? So the boys will wonder what happened. Boys will wonder what happened and they would want to genuinely know. But nobody will talk about it. The teachers, if you go and ask your parents, they won't give you an answer. If they ask their teachers, they won't give an answer. So then they'll look online nowadays, or you ask a friend, and then you lack understanding of. That's why, again, coming back to equality. So then, if you're given this information, if you know about menstruation, how body functions, a female body or male body, you start to question your belief system.
So we need equality to come in terms of treat everybody equally, girl or boy, or someone who chooses not to be identified as a girl or a boy, right? So equality means treat everybody equally. So Grassrooted a long time ago decided that we have only one goal, and that is human dignity. But for human dignity, we need not to bring up entitled young men and women who think this is their place.
What sort of backlash have you all got as Grassrooted when you all try to go out and talk about these things?
Even in Katankudi, when you go, and even in considered highly controversial, conservative, you can go and talk about these controversial topics like hymen and virginity, because when you explain it to them, as parents, as teachers, most of them logically they understand the need for it. It's not about teaching, sex education is not about teaching kids about condoms at grade 1 or how to prevent pregnancy when you are in grade 5, or how to use, how to have anal sex, or how to masturbate. That's not what sex education is.
And all studies, you can read studies from all over, they find that if you provide frank and open sex ed or relationship ed, it actually delays, every single study has found, it delays sexual debut. It delays, right? So if you want an evidence base, the evidence base is there.
It delays because it's boring then for kids.
No, it delays because they have something to think about, they have the information, so they're taking informed decision. It delays sexual debut.
Also, it empowers young girls to say no.
Yes.
Yeah. Because then at the moment, if you don't provide that education, girls think, okay, when my boyfriend wants to have sex with me, I have to agree to it, otherwise he'll leave me, or that is my responsibility.
Sometimes no is the most important thing that you can tell a young girl. It's okay to say. It's okay to say no. And then they throw, I use 3 words for them. I say no, okay and fine. Use those 3 liberally. So the pressure comes, no. Then I'm going to go, okay. You'll never see me again. Fine. Right? Yeah. It's okay. You can, the ability for a young woman to say no in this country is very, very important.
It becomes slightly difficult to teach when they've passed a certain age. That's why, because when you're an adult, it's very difficult for you to kind of leave your belief system and say no if somebody is trying to do something to you. The no-go-tell approach is what we use for good touch and bad touch. We don't call it good touch and bad touch anymore, because you can't, good and bad is, you can't define it.
Yeah, because if this is, now if we say this is okay, if we say this, even worse, if we say this is okay, touching here is okay, it's not okay, because we've identified bad touch as your underwear area or whatever, but this can be as bad, if depending on who the person is, right? So you have to help children then articulate how they feel, what is comfortable, what is uncomfortable. Those are important discussions to have. And what parents do regularly is they break consent. Darling, kiss auntie. No, I don't want to kiss auntie. Kiss auntie. They force you to kiss auntie, or they force you to sit on auntie's lap. So then someone with more power is, that child is learning, okay, my consent doesn't really come into play. So that's how early you can start. You can start at 1, 2. That's how early.
You all are parents, right? At what age are you going to have the, y'all are renegade parents though anyway. Have you already, I know she's 3, right? You said she's coming up on 3.
2 and 3 months.
So at which point are you going to have these conversations? Does the goalpost change when it's your child versus teaching
No.
other people's children?
I mean, she already says no. For example, we had a small party 2 days ago, and then a lot of people try to touch her and say high five and all that. So she's like, Atalla nepa. Always it's a difficult battle in my head also to whether to push, I mean, say it's okay or not.
Yeah.
But then the over 80% of people who abuse children are from their own circles, either from family or parents, friends, or from school. So it's important that the child knows that child has the agency.
She has made me far more comfortable with who I am and my body than I have been in the 44 years past.
Okay.
Because she cuts through the bullshit and she asks me questions, not just about my body, but about everything. I mema. She's already started that I mema. So then you have to say I.
For example, how she asks whether there's breast milk, for example.
Yeah. Do I have breast milk?
So she's
Yeah.
like, no,
Yeah.
Dada doesn't have.
Dadage kukkulin kiriyan nadda.
So that kind of, we
So you have to
be-
have that conversation. You can't say no. Don't talk to me about my cuckoo. You know what I mean? You can't. That's curiosity, right? So you have to have that conversation.
That's why you can't limit that kind of education to a classroom, one chapter. Parents have to get on board. If the parents are listening to them, kids will definitely listen to you. So it's not like my kid has to always listen to me. I have to listen to her also, and if we don't agree on certain things, there has to be some sort of open, honest conversation about it.
Is there anything that you want to tell Sri Lanka out there? Parents, a lot of parents watch this show.
Talk to your kids. Make sure open lines of communication at all times.
Have a conversation.
Have a conversation. Have a chat.
Have a chat.